Are you a strong, independent woman who's passionate about her career? Then this podcast is perfect for you. Based on her book, The Career Woman's Secret Playbook, career coach Dr. Dawn Hamby shares the kind of insider secrets you can only know if you've hired, fired, and promoted employees over the past 30 years.
Ladies, I'm on a mission to help busy women just like you create a career and life you love without sacrificing your work-life balance to get it. Come join me as we inspire and motivate each other only as women can and have lots of fun along the way.
With Dr. Dawn's tools, strategies, and action steps, you can unleash your personal and professional power in a whole new way. Here's today's episode.
Hello, listeners, and welcome to another episode of the Career Woman's Secret Playbook podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Dawn, CEO and founder of Dr. Dawn Shop Talk, and I am so excited to bring you today's topic because it's definitely something we all have to deal with. That is a negative coworker. Oh my goodness, you could be having the best day, and you know there's always those few people out there that really test our patience. And it's especially tough when that negative coworker is constantly coming to you and bothering you with these problems, especially if they end up wanting to use you as a sounding board for complaints. You know the type, that negative Nancy, or not to be unfair to the ladies out there, because we always say negative Nancy, how about negative Ned? Okay, something like that. Thank you. But that person is always complaining. Oftentimes they're complaining about other people in the office, and we know if you do that too much, it just ends up creating a very toxic environment. And here's another thing that drives me crazy about that personality type. When they come to you with complaints, they rarely even think about the fact that you might be in the middle of something important. They don't seem to be cognizant of your time. It's more important to them to think about their time. Now, maybe to give them, a little benefit of the doubt, maybe they're just not realizing how they're coming across. But we're going to deal with all of that today, because the last thing you need is someone interrupting your workday just to complain. And many times that type of personality doesn't even come to you with any solutions, much less an open mind to see what they can do to change things. So that's what we're going to be talking about today. Now, here's something else I want to say about negativity in the workplace. It really can be like a storm, kind of like a storm cloud that just hangs over you. But fear not, ladies, because today I'm going to give you some action steps and strategies that you can take right now to weather this storm and maintain your professional sanity in the process. Now, speaking of a storm, it reminds me of one of my favorite quotes. I use this all the time in my business. It's by author Jake Remington. Some of you may have heard of it before, and it goes like this. Fate whispers to the warrior, you cannot withstand the storm. The warrior whispers back, I am the storm. The reason I love that quote and that it resonates with me is that I have always had that fighter spirit. I'm pretty sure I was born with it according to my family, but I know I also do things that help cultivate that. So it is a quote I use a lot in my business and with my clients because I want every Shop Talk client to feel like the warrior I know that they are. Not because I want them to be attacking people, okay? No, not at all. It's because I want our clients to feel like we're giving them the tools and resources they need to fight for what they believe in, to get what they want and to shield themselves from what life can throw their way. So these are just some of the topics that we cover in this podcast. And you guys, if you've been listening for a while, you know this is about the time that I ask you to give us comments, to give us your feedback. If you would give us a rating, oh my goodness, we would love that. Well, if it's a good rating, that is. We want to get that 5-star review so that we can push this content out, kind of get our message out to more people just like you who are really wanting to live their lives with more passion and purpose. And if you have a couple of seconds, oh my goodness, if you could drop us a line or two, we would absolutely love that. You're also going to hear in the podcast that I'm going to kind of reference other episodes I think can help you. I've covered a lot of these topics on my YouTube channel and also on other episodes of the podcast. So as I go through the tips today, I'll be referencing that and I'll include those links in the show notes. If you're watching us on YouTube, you can click on more and find that right away. And if you are watching us on YouTube, don't forget to give us a thumbs up, share this video with anybody else you think could use it. And if you're listening to us on your favorite podcast platform, then again, please consider giving us a review and a rating, and definitely share this episode. It's easy to share the podcast episode on text messages, emails, those kinds of things. So we hope you really like it. Be sure to comment also if you've got other ideas for our podcast, and if you've got other strategies that you use when somebody is driving you nuts at the office. Now, speaking of that, it reminds me that I've got a free cheat sheet for you. It's literally called What to Do When Your Office is Driving You Nuts. It's one of my favorite cheat sheets, and it even comes with a bonus coaching session with me. So if you're interested in that, head on over to our website at drdonshoptalk.com. Right there on the homepage, you can click on that cheat sheet and you get that pretty much immediately as soon as you sign up. So check that out. All right, you guys, well, without any further ado, let's get started with today's episode and let's go over the tips I'm going to share with you, the action steps you can put in place right now so that you can deal with a negative coworker better than you've ever had to do before. These are easy ways that you can confront the problem without being confrontational. So let's take a look at that right now. All right, ladies, let's get back to today's episode. Let's start by acknowledging that dealing with a negative coworker can be emotionally draining and can really impact your overall job satisfaction. However, there are several effective strategies, as I said in the intro, that you can put in place right now. I want to share with you what I share with my clients, what I've shared with my employees, even my girlfriends. These are things that can help you navigate this tricky situation a little bit more gracefully so that you don't have to add any more stress to probably your already full plate, okay? So we're going to make sure you don't have to deal with that. So let's start with tip number 1. I want you to empathize and to listen. So our first strategy is to really empathize with what the person is going through and to actively listen. In other words, try to understand what might be going on. Why is your coworker so stressed out in the first place? In other words, what's kind of leading to that negativity? Now, we know this person may just be one of those glass half empty kinds of people, right? But sometimes there could really be legitimate reasons why they're upset. Sometimes personal issues or work-related stress in other areas might actually be fueling their complaints. So try your best. I know it's hard, okay, especially if they're doing this all the time, but try to approach them with an open mind, ask questions, and show genuine concern. This can really kind of bridge that gap where, your coworker maybe just doesn't feel like there's anyone to validate their feelings or to listen to them. And if they're doing this all the time, people are probably avoiding them, which then can just sort of add to this terrible negative cycle. They reach out for help by complaining, which isn't the best way. Then people start avoiding them. Then they start getting paranoid that nobody wants to hang around them. And guess what? They don't. What do they say? Is it a conspiracy if it's actually true? So they may not see their role in it. Now, it's not your responsibility. Let me put this disclaimer out here. I don't want you to take on their problems and yours. You do have to be careful. We'll talk about boundaries in a minute, but you do have to be careful with how long you go with listening. Okay, I do want you to be empathetic and sympathetic, but again, you want to make sure you're not taking on all of their problems and trying to solve it for them. It's not your job to fix their problems, but you can be a sympathetic, coworker, and then hopefully perhaps a friend. Now, I mentioned in the intro that I want to make sure on the podcast that if I can think of other episodes that I've done that can help you, I want to make sure I mention it. And I'm already thinking of one on my YouTube channel. It goes back, I think it's from last year, called How to Deal with a Difficult Boss. So again, every episode I mentioned today, I'll make sure I put in the show notes, both on the podcast and on the YouTube channel. Okay, I mentioned boundaries. That's going to be tip number 2. So let's talk about that a little bit more. You guys, it is so important. It is essential, okay, to set healthy boundaries, both personally and professionally. I work on this all the time, not just for my own sake, but definitely for the sake of my clients and also with my employees. There were times where we really did have to set boundaries, both again in their work life and personal life. It's really crucial, like I said, to empathize, but you don't want to be caught up in this never-ending cycle of complaints. So politely, let your coworker know that you are available to listen, but that you also need to focus on your work. This boundary is really going to help protect your own well-being, your own emotional state of mind, your own mental health, and it is a good way for your coworker to understand they can't just plop down in your office or in your cubicle and just go to town complaining. You really don't want to encourage that. In fact, you've heard of this, I'm sure, before. It's a very popular belief in the personal and professional development space. It's been around a long time. And it's this philosophy that you teach people how to treat you. It is really true. I have seen this play out not only in my own professional life, but in my personal one as well. I'm thinking of a really good friend of mine who used to work with me, maybe 5, 6, 7 years ago. And she was the sweetest person in the world, but she was really bad about not ever setting healthy boundaries. People would literally walk past my office and go straight to hers and constantly interrupt her. It didn't matter what she did. Until she started to have conversations like what I'm talking about. All it takes is you just letting people know on the front end that you've got a lot to do. And, maybe you could chit chat at lunch or grab a cup of coffee, but if the person is so negative all the time, there's going to be some other things you're going to want to do before you really invite them in your inner circle. I don't want you to have lunch dates with this person if they're going to depress you all the time. Who has time for that? And I don't want you to deal with that. So we'll talk about some of those other strategies as well in this episode and in some future episodes. Okay, now speaking of episodes, let me give you 2 that I've done before on my YouTube channel. And I gave them kind of funny names because who doesn't need a little giggle when it comes to trying to set healthy boundaries? It's not always easy to do. So one of the episodes is called How Healthy Boundaries Keep You from Getting Arrested. And then the subtitle is It Starts With You. In that video, I'm really talking about, just this idea I just mentioned, the fact that you teach people how to treat you. And so when I'm thinking of my friend from 5, 6 years ago, that's exactly right. And just as a good friend of hers, I talked to her about that. It's not like she became a client or anything like that, but I just hated to see her go through this. Now, my office was not right next door to hers. I would just hear her stressed out about this when we would go to lunch. And so I told her, because, her first idea was, oh, I'm going to invite them to lunch and we're going to talk about it. I'm like, no. You're going to need to do some other tips. And in fact, I'm getting ready to share some of those with you, but you need to do some other tips, I told her, before you really invite this person in. Think about it, you guys. Your free time and your lunch hour is definitely one of those. It's very precious. It really is. Because if you're struggling in your career and maybe right now you just don't love your job, then the last thing you want is to surround yourself with people who are pulling you down emotionally. Again, like I said in the intro, it can be an emotional drain to have a lot of negativity in the workplace. And if you don't have the kind of leadership that is helping you fix the problem, we'll get to that in a minute, then again, you're going to have to set those boundaries. And one of those boundaries is to take care of yourself on your lunch hour and on your free time. Okay. All right. Tip number 3, our third strategy involves reframing and redirecting. Okay. So in tip number 3, that's exactly what I want you to do. Let's reframe and redirect. So what that means is I want you to start reframing the conversation and redirecting that person's negative energy. So here's what you do. When that coworker starts complaining, I want you to gently steer the conversation towards finding solutions or finding the silver lining. In other words, the positive aspects of the situation. So let me give you an example. You might say, "Oh, listen, Joe, I really understand your concern. I really do. But what do you think we could do to improve the situation today? The last thing I want is for you to come in here all the time and complain about it. It's going to drive me crazy. It's going to drive you crazy. And I just hate to see you go through all that." So when you say it this way, it encourages a much more constructive dialogue. Now, one of the reasons this doesn't happen is people have the misconception that if you confront a problem, that it has to be confrontational. That is absolutely not true. That's garbage. What happens is people get nervous. They don't like having those difficult conversations. In fact, one of the things I do for my clients if they need it is I actually create a script for them. I actually tell them exactly what to say. I kind of put together sort of like a cheat sheet, like a framework, just like I'm talking about reframing in this tip. And then that way they can just plug it in with their particular situation because there are, certain, I don't know, foundational elements to how to have a difficult conversation in a professional way where you come from a place of abundance and you come from a place of strength where again, that person understands you're setting a boundary, right? And when you do that enough, then they're not going to go to you. They're going to go that next weak link in that chain, okay? Now, I mentioned confronting the problem. I've got a great episode for you on the YouTube channel. It's from my Monday Huddle show, and it's called Confront or Confrontational. So I talk about this issue in more detail, you guys, so be sure to check that out. All right, let's move on to tip number 4. In this strategy, I'm calling it seek guidance from, you guessed it, your supervisor. All right. I want you to get that guidance from the supervisors. If and only if this negativity persists and is significantly impacting your day and your work environment. Now, if you're not getting help from your supervisor, that's a whole other conversation. I've got other episodes about difficult bosses, right? But consider seeking guidance from the HR department if you're not getting the help you need from your supervisor. Just remember, it's always great to start with your supervisor because true leadership means that they ought to be able to give you the guidance you need and help you fix this problem. They have not only the tools, but they actually have the authority to address the problem and also to be able to create a healthier workplace. Now, notice I say workplace a lot. That's because I really believe it should be the workplace, not just the workforce. Okay? This should be a place away from home. Your colleagues and supervisors really can become a work family if you've got an awesome, culture. In fact, that's something I'm so passionate about in my consulting business is helping companies, no matter how big or small, create that enviable work culture. I promise you it can happen. And it really does start with you. If you're not getting the support you need from leadership, definitely comment below. I can always do some other episodes to help you with that, to have those conversations. And in fact, another episode I've done on YouTube is literally called Put Your Big Pants On and Talk to the Boss Already. Okay? Because again, you guys, here's the deal. The boss can't fix the problem if they don't know the problem exists. And that negative person may show a completely different personality and put on a completely different face in front of the boss. And here's something else I want you to do. I want you to document specific instances. The more specific, the better. It not only provides context to kind of support your case, but being a former boss myself for over 14 years, actually, I think it's closer to 16 years, in management where I directly manage teams. Okay, I had employees reporting directly to me, and I've had the privilege of running huge departments. And I tell you, there were so many times where I didn't really know that there were these subtle problems, and it was started off subtle, and then some of those problems really became huge. So, you start with these little cracks, and they can become craters if you're not careful. Now, I was lucky enough that I established really great relationships with my employees. Some of them are my dearest friends today. So I have tips and tricks I can share with supervisors to kind of make that happen. And it should be able to happen. My gosh, it really should. I've gone to my supervisors for, lots of reasons. I've had scary, medical problems sometimes, either with myself or my family, with friends. I've had, really terrible things that have happened to, my family, myself, and dear ones in my life. And so if you're dealing with some really scary and, really challenging problems, you oftentimes need to tell your boss so they understand why you're not bringing your A game and why you might be the negative person that week or that month. And if you tell them ahead of time, then unless they're just a terrible boss, and yes, I know we have those out there, okay, we really do. In fact, I'm a little scared that one of my most popular videos on my YouTube channel is the one called When Your Boss is the Perfectionist. And I'm telling you, when I even try to point out anything positive about working for a perfectionist, that can be a real trigger for people because some of their bosses have been horrible, right? So you want to be able to commiserate with the fact that a really bad boss can be a terrible situation. So I always approach things with things you can control. And one of the things you can control is talking to your boss. And if you're not getting anywhere there because they're not helping you fix this problem, then you do have to put those big pants on, like I said, and talk to human resources. And if you're not getting any help there, again, guys, there are other ways that you can go. You can keep going up the food chain until you get the help you need because you deserve it. All right, let's move on to tip number 5. This one I'm calling maintain a positive network. So our 5th strategy is all about building and maintaining a positive network within your workplace. So in other words, I want you to surround yourself with colleagues that really uplift and inspire you. That's why I wanted you to pump the brakes on inviting that negative person to lunch right away. Let's put these other strategies in place first and see if we can help them kind of turn that ship around before you invite them in your, personal space and on your personal time, okay? So it's so important to surround yourself with people and things that really do counterbalance the effects of a negative coworker. Okay, so going back to that quote about not being afraid of the storm because you are the storm, that's what strategies like this can do. It can kind of create a suit of armor. And that suit of armor does not prevent those slings and arrows coming your way. It doesn't prevent life from kicking you in the teeth sometimes. But what it does prevent is you being fatally injured from it. It may still hurt, okay? It really may, but you're going to get through it. You are going to face it, and you're going to face it with courage, and you're going to face it with grace, and people are going to look at you and go, wow, what a class act. That's what I want for you and our clients at Shop Talk. That's why I'm so passionate about this podcast and talking about issues like this on our YouTube channel. So again, seek those out that share your same abundance mindset, that share your positive goals and values, and then really cultivate those supportive relationships. Now, comment below if you would like for me to do an episode on how to do this specifically, and also if you would like for me to cover an episode about building your network in general. It is really important to have a network, not just in your personal life, in other words, surrounding yourself with a circle of support, support, whether it's your girlfriends, whether it's your work friends or family members, right, that you really look up to, or perhaps a mentor that really inspires you. So that is very, very important, like I said. But it's also important to build your professional network so that if things really got horrible at your job and you needed to pivot, well, you're planting the seed because you've got people out there that can help support you. And what if one of your goals is to start your own business? Maybe you don't even know that right now and you realize that's what you really want to do. Well, building a network can really help you with that. In fact, I'm part of an amazing network. It's called BNI, Business Networking International. They've been around for 38 years, and they help small business owners all around the world. I think they're like in 72 countries or something like that. I should know the number, but I'll have to check that. But BNI helps people build their network and helps support them in passing referrals and business to each other, just like how a chamber does. I'm a member of the chamber. I'm an ambassador for the chamber. I love everything related to what a chamber stands for. So these are just two examples of wonderful groups that can help you build your network so you don't feel like all of your, eggs are in one basket. It's really nice to be able to have professional organizations to help support you, especially when you're going through tough times. Okay, you guys, let's move on to our last tip for the day. Tip number 6 is called self-care is key. Now, I talk about self-care all the time. If you've listened to other podcast episodes or our YouTube channel, in fact, I think this is so important. I actually made self-care and creating this new CEO mindset, which is very tied to that, our premiere episode right here on this podcast. That's right, ladies. If you missed it, go all the way back to episode number 1. I've got you. But the reason that this one is so important, right? It's last but certainly not least, is that you have to prioritize it even during the workday. Here's why. Dealing with negativity, as I mentioned before, can definitely be emotionally draining. And when that affects you because it's somebody else that's bringing the negativity to you, that makes it even more frustrating. This isn't even your cause, and it's affecting you again because maybe you haven't set those healthy boundaries. Maybe you haven't had those difficult conversations. Maybe you haven't surrounded yourself with the right people at work, those kinds of things. So this tip can help bring all of that together by making sure that you're taking very good care of yourself inside and outside of work. So engage in activities that recharge you right there in the office. Use different apps if you need to. For example, I love the Calm app. They've got wonderful ways to kind of have like a 2-minute meditation right there at work. When I would do tedious tasks, I used to listen to their bonfire. It was called like bonfire at the sea or something. Anyway, it was one of those sound effects where you could hear this crackling bonfire and the ocean waves. Oh my goodness, it was great, especially if you work in a cubicle setting. If you can hear other conversations right next to you, it may be hard to concentrate. So, plug in your headphones, listen to something that inspires you. Like I love classical music when I really need to write. So I'm listening to Vivaldi or some amazing George Winston piano piece or something like that. And so it just really helps me concentrate. Okay. Now, another activity you might think about is some stress reduction techniques that don't involve, perhaps meditation or something like that. Instead, you might need something like a walk. Just go out of the office, step outside if it's a beautiful day, take 5-10 minutes to take that walk. It's not only going to recharge you, but just getting outside and away from your computer is going to kind of help, with breathing in that fresh air. You just get that oxygen to your blood, and it can really help you in terms of your productivity. Now, if you do all of this, decide once and for all what's missing in terms of your self-care. Maybe it's possible that you need to seek more support from your friends and family, and you got to set those healthy boundaries at home. If you're taking care of yourself and everybody else, and maybe some of the people in your life could perhaps take a little care of you, kind of a crazy concept, I know, then you might consider that. Are your children old enough to help with the laundry, for example, or cleaning the kitchen? Or do you need to get that husband or that wife in line? Okay, sometimes again, those healthy boundaries mean that you are taking care of yourself. Remember, self-care is not selfish, and if all else fails, you might even consider seeking help from a professional. How about seeking out a therapist? I mean, it can be a wonderful resource. I'm not just partial to that because I have a degree in psychology and was going to go into therapy for many, many years. But I value that practice. It can be so helpful. Okay, it really can. So really consider that at the very least because you need all the support you can have in order to deal with a negative coworker so it does not affect your day. All right, you guys, thank you again for tuning in for another episode of the Career Woman's Secret Playbook podcast. Remember that dealing with all of this can be a challenge, but also remember that you do, especially now, have the tools and strategies to not just weather that storm, but to become the storm when you need to be. So don't forget, these tips are easy. Let's recap them one more time. You're going to empathize. You're going to set boundaries. You're going to reframe and redirect. You're going to seek guidance when you need it. You're going to create that positive network, and you're going to prioritize self-care. Now, don't forget, if you found today's episode helpful, please rate, review, and subscribe. We would love that. Share it with others as well. They might be facing similar challenges. And always remember, keep shining in your career. Please don't let anyone dampen your spirit. You don't deserve it. You don't need it. And there's things you now know you can do because you've got this. And don't forget our motto here at Shop Talk, and it's this: if you're not having a fantastic day, you have the power to make it one. See you next time. I know our episode is over, but this is just the beginning. If you're ready to take action but don't know where to start, just head over to drdonshoptalk.com for lots of free resources, ways to work together, and for even more. Subscribe to the Dr. Dawn Shop Talk YouTube channel. Remember, ladies, you don't have to take this journey alone. I've got you covered. Till next time.